you've written a story about how, just as Watergate led to Watergate reforms, how Donald Trump's presidency may lead to Trump reforms. And it's really a question that I'm continually grapple with. So I loved your article, found it fascinating. What are some of the solutions that Congress and reformers may do moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, look, after Watergate, as you know, Joe, obviously they tried to fix the system in the ways that they could, right? They instituted new campaign finance rules, new transparency, freedom of information, Presidential Records Act. They established the Ethics in Government Act, including an independent counsel. Now, not all of these reforms worked all that well. Some of them aren't even really in place. And I think what we discovered also in the last 4 years is, as you put it, Joe, a lot of the constraints we saw on presidents in the post-Watergate period were restraints of their own acceptance and deference rather than legal or binding rules, right? This president has shown you can do an awful lot of things that we thought presidents didn't do or couldn't do, and still have the authority apparently to do them. So what these reformers are talking about are ways of restricting, for instance, the president's pardon power. So he couldn't pardon himself or use the pardon power to obstruct justice by influencing witnesses against him, bolstering the power of a special counsel. We no longer have an independent counsel, which is what was created after Watergate, because Republicans and Democrats alike got tired of that after Ken Starr and the Iran-Contra affair. But a special counsel, rather than report just to the Justice Department, as we saw with Robert Mueller in this case, for instance, would report to Congress or report to the public. The idea that this would not be beholden to the administration it was investigating. A variety of other reforms, for instance, rewriting the authorization to use force that's been in place since 2001 and the terrorist attacks of 9/11, so that a president doesn't have quite as much a free hand to use the military around the world. Restricting the FBI director from opening and closing investigations without some input from the attorney general, as happened during the Hillary Clinton email case. So there are a variety of ideas that people have out there. Now, whether or not there would be a bipartisan consensus the way there kind of was after Watergate, that's a bigger question. It obviously depends on whether President Trump wins a second term. And it's also questionable whether or not these by themselves would necessarily make a radical change. As you say, a lot of this does depend on the nature of the person who holds the office and the constraints that they feel, either politically or morally or ethically or just in terms of their understanding of what the separation of powers really is all about.
Mike, I know you have a question for Peter, but I want to get your thoughts on something that's disturbed me over the past 4 years, and it's the concept that in America, the president is above the law. I think the Justice Department guidance that a president can't be indicted is absolutely preposterous. There's no reason why there's no reason why Donald Trump getting reelected would stop him from facing the same justice that other Americans would face if they were in his position. We have to look at the pardon power, Donald Trump using the pardon power to obstruct investigations, as Peter said, using the power to commute a sentence to help political allies that may have been involved in a political conspiracy with him. And finally, I think the most troublesome question, our Attorney General. And I was worried about this before Barr, long before Barr. If we have an attorney general that is appointed by the President of the United States and prosecutors who are appointed by the United States, then you have a corrupt president like Donald Trump that can kill investigations, that can pressure the attorney general to stop investigations, whether it's in the Southern District of New York or anywhere else across the United States, that has the power to get the attorney general to back off of investigations of a political ally, or to lean in, as we're seeing now, to investigations of a political enemy. It seems to me, if you are a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, you would want to have an attorney general that may be appointed by the president, but is not approved unless there's a supermajority of Congress supporting someone who is so beyond reproach that they would get 2/3 of the House and Senate voting for him.
Joe, you've touched upon one of the most corrosive and corrupting aspects of the Trump administration, which is the corruption, the slow, steady corruption of the Justice Department, led by Attorney General Bill Barr. It's been going on since he was sworn in as Attorney General. And now, as we close into an election day, lurking out there still, we have the John Durham investigation. What's going on with that? I mean, traveling through Europe together with John Durham, the Attorney General traveling through Europe with an investigator. We have had the unmasking farce that was just exposed within the past few days. And Peter Baker, your piece in the Times focuses on two highly respected lawyers, both former members of the federal government, one Republican, one Democrat. What directionally is the plan, or do they have a plan yet, for isolating and insulating going forward the Department of Justice and future attorneys general from the tainted by campaigns and corruption and politics?
Yeah, I think that's a really huge issue. You're exactly right, Mike, because that's, the perceived politicization of the Justice Department is one of the lasting legacies, because it opens the question of what future presidents could do. Now, of course, Bill Barr has been accused of being very pliable for this president and acceding to his wishes on things like lowering the sentence for Roger Stone and reversing the conviction for Michael Flynn. So far, he has not acceded to the president in terms of opening some sort of an overt investigation into Joe Biden in these final days of the campaign. Imagine if you had an even more pliable attorney general who would. What we've learned is that the president does control the executive branch. He does have the authority and power over the Justice Department. He has the apparently, very, if not unlimited, at least very expansive ability to use the Justice Department in ways that we once thought were out of bounds. And so the question is, how do you try to bring that in? The two lawyers you mentioned are Jack Goldsmith, who served as the Assistant Attorney General for George W. Bush, and Bob Bauer, who served as the White House counsel for Barack Obama. They've got a new book out about this. Particularly interesting because Mr. Bauer actually is advising, a senior advisor to the Biden campaign. So I think the book of theirs in some ways could be read as a blueprint, perhaps, that the Biden camp might consider if, in fact, it were to win the election. But you're right. I think the most important thing to see is what to do about accountability in the Justice Department. So the idea of the special counsel would be that it not report necessarily just to a Bill Barr, who would then take the report and characterize it the way he wanted to, the way he did during the Mueller experience. But in fact, the special counsel would report to the public, would report to Congress, and the findings would become known to everybody. Also, the ideas that they have include protecting inspectors general. You'll remember that the president has purged inspectors general when they found impropriety on his own administration. Those are meant as a check on, excessive executive power, for instance, and he's basically shoved them out when they crossed him. So there are all sorts of ideas in this plan, and the House Democrats under Adam Schiff and others have a plan of their own. I think you'll see a whole, germination of thinking about this if Biden were to win the election, and particularly if Democrats were to win both houses. That, of course, raises the possibility of a partisan reform, and obviously everything is better if there would be bipartisan buy-in.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.